Picture this. You're in the roaring 20s, jazz music is playing, flapper girls are dancing, and you're in a speakeasy about to take a swig of your favorite, albeit illegal, beverage. The atmosphere is electrifying, charged with an intoxicating mix of danger and exhilaration. The clandestine nature of the speakeasy, hidden behind unassuming facades, adds to the thrill of the evening. The patrons are a lively bunch, a mix of bohemians, intellectuals, and thrill-seekers, all united by their defiance of the 18th Amendment. The drinks? Well, they're flowing like the Mississippi River, each one a tantalizing blend of mystery and rebellion. One can almost taste the defiance in each sip, a silent cheers to the spirit of rebellion. But just as you're about to lose yourself in the rhythm of the jazz and the warmth of the liquor, you notice something off about your drink. Suddenly, you take a sip and... Wait, what's that? A peculiar taste? Could it be poison? Now, you might be thinking, poison? Really? Oh yes, really. And it wasn't the work of a disgruntled bartender or a rival gangster. Let's rewind to the roaring 20s, the era of speakeasies and flappers, when the US government decided to embark on a rather unusual strategy. To discourage the consumption of alcohol during Prohibition, they didn't just ban the stuff. Oh no, that would be too straightforward. Instead, they hatched a plan that would make even the most diabolical supervillain raise an eyebrow. Imagine a group of stern, straight-laced government officials sitting around a table brainstorming. What if, one of them suggests, we add something to the alcohol that makes it undrinkable? There's a moment of silence, then someone else pipes up. What if we go a step further? What if we make the alcohol poisonous? And just like that, the US government, in their infinite wisdom, decided to poison the nation's alcohol supply. Industrial alcohols, often stolen and repurposed for human consumption, were laced with chemicals that would make them lethal. It was their twisted way of putting a cork in the bottle of the nation's drinking problem. Now I know what you're thinking, surely they warned people, right? Well, not exactly, they did issue warnings, but they were about as clear as a speakeasy's backdoor password. It was not uncommon for these warnings to be disregarded or simply not understood by the people they were intended to protect. And so the deadly concoctions flowed freely from the hidden corners of speakeasies to the top of the social ladder at lavish parties. The government's unusual strategy had turned a night out into a dangerous game of Russian roulette. So, next time you're sipping on your favorite cocktail, spare a thought for the poor souls of the Prohibition era who never knew if their drink would be their last. Imagine the government deciding, hey, you know what's a good way to stop people from drinking? Let's just poison the stuff. So, what was in this deadly cocktail? And no, it wasn't a splash of cyanide or a sprinkle of arsenic. But what if I told you that our government turned into a bit of a rogue mixologist during the Prohibition era? Now, the government knew it couldn't just pour a shot of poison into every bootleg bottle. That would be too obvious. And even the most desperate of drinkers would catch on. So they decided to be a little more creative. They used chemicals known as denaturants. Now, don't let that fancy term fool you. Denaturants are substances added to alcohol to make it undrinkable. And when I say undrinkable, I don't just mean it tastes like a bad tequila sunrise. I'm talking about some nasty stuff here. Methanol was a popular choice. Consumed in large amounts, it can cause blindness or even death, but hey, at least you wouldn't have to see the terrible decision you just made by drinking it, right? Then there was acetone, better known as nail polish remover. It can cause nausea, vomiting, and in extreme cases, coma or death. But on the bright side, your breath would be minty fresh. I'm kidding, it would actually smell like you've been chugging nail varnish. And let's not forget about benzene, a sweet, pleasant-smelling liquid. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? Well, it's also a potent carcinogen, so while you might enjoy the aroma, your body will not be a fan. There were other chemicals too, each with their own delightful side effects, but the point is the government wasn't just trying to make alcohol taste bad. They were making it deadly. A sip of this cocktail could send you to the hospital, or worse, the morgue. So next time you're at a bar, raise a glass to the good old days when our government was the most dangerous bartender around. Who knew the government had such a knack for lethal bartending? All right, so the government has just poisoned the alcohol supply. Now what? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the consequences were nothing short of catastrophic. Picture this. People across the country sipping their hooch only to keel over, clutching their stomachs. Imagine the surprise when what was supposed to be a fun night out turned into a horror show. Now here's the kicker. You'd think a couple of poisonings would put people off their drinks, right? Wrong. If anything, it only made them more determined to get their hands on a clean glass of the good stuff. The ingenuity of the thirsty is not to be underestimated. But let's not gloss over the real cost of this ill-conceived plan. Thousands of people fell ill, and many didn't recover. The death toll from the government's poison alcohol plan was staggering. In New York City alone, within a year, over 1,000 people had died. But hey, who's counting, right? After all, this was all in the name of public health. Talk about a cure worse than the disease. Now, you might be wondering, did the government face any repercussions for this? Well, not exactly. You see, this was the Prohibition era, a time when the government could do no wrong. At least, that's what they thought. And so the poisoning continued, with the government turning a blind eye to the chaos they'd created. Instead, they blamed the victims, claiming they'd brought their fate upon themselves by breaking the law. In the end, this disastrous plan only served to fuel the public's resentment towards prohibition. It certainly didn't stop people from drinking. If anything, it made them more determined to fight for their right to a poison-free pint. And there you have it, folks. The government's ingenious plan to stop drinking. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. So what can we learn from this rather bizarre chapter in history? And more importantly, what does it mean for us today? Let's be clear, the Prohibition era in the United States was a tumultuous time, riddled with irony. A government that was supposed to protect its citizens ended up poisoning them instead, all in a bid to control the vice of drinking. It's a sobering reminder, if you'll pardon the pun, of the lengths that those in power can go to enforce their moral code on society. In a sense, the Prohibition era was a grand experiment in social control. The government, armed with the best of intentions, tried to curb alcohol consumption only to create a more dangerous problem. Instead of decreasing alcohol consumption, they created a black market, and in their attempt to discourage this, they ended up causing the death of thousands. This has a striking resonance with our modern world. This is not to say that our governments are out there poisoning our martinis, but it does raise questions about the extent to which laws and regulations can shape and sometimes distort societal behavior, and how sometimes these distortions can have fatal consequences. What this chapter of history emphasizes is the importance of critical thinking and questioning authority. It's easy to accept things at face value, to trust the powers that be without a second thought. But history has shown us time and time again that blind faith can lead us down some very dangerous roads. The Prohibition era serves as a stark reminder of this. It's a reminder that we should always question, always probe, always demand transparency. It's a reminder that those in power are not infallible, that they can make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can be deadly. It's also a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. Despite the government's best efforts, people found ways to circumvent the ban on alcohol. Speakeasies popped up like mushrooms after a spring rain, and people continued to enjoy their tipple, albeit in secret. This is not to condone illegal activities, but rather to highlight the indomitable spirit of humanity, the innate desire for freedom and choice. So as we reflect on this dark chapter of our history, let's not forget the lessons it has taught us. Let's remember to question, to probe, to demand transparency. Let's remember to be aware of the power dynamics at play in our society and to challenge them when they seem unjust. And let's remember the resilience of the human spirit, the power of choice, and the importance of freedom. So next time you're at a bar, remember to toast to the fact that your drink is presumably poison-free. Cheers to that.